Hello, so in this recording I'm going to talk about market equilibrium. Now market equilibrium is where we bring supply and demand curves together. So in the graph on the right hand side I've got the supply curve in green, and that slopes up because suppliers, as the price increases, would want to supply more, and then we've got the demand curve which slopes down, and here we have the opposite effect because as the price increases demand will drop. So what we're going to do is look at this point where they cross. This is the market equilibrium. So here we've got a price of 200 pence or £2, and then you've got a quantity of 300 that are being demanded. So you could imagine this in terms of, say, your ticket sales. And effectively at this point there's no unsatisfied consumers. Everyone who wants to get a ticket at that price is buying it, and the suppliers are happy because all they want to supply are being bought. So this is this sort of equilibrium point. Now it's not always, as I said at the bottom, an equitable solution, because there's going to be some consumers who can't afford to pay that price. And also there are some consumers who might be willing to have paid more. So this is something that the supplier has to think about in terms of their pricing. So we're going to look now at what happens if there's a movement of the demand curve. So the demand curve, the first demand curve is in red there, and we're going to assume there's a shift in demand to this demand curve D2. So it moves to the left. Now this can happen for all sorts of reasons, but things can be like income falls. There might be a shift in the price of a substitution cost. So for instance, you have a competing event which suddenly costs less, and then you would see your demand drop, or price of a complementary product increases. So maybe there's an increase in tax on alcohol, and that raises the price of actually having alcohol, which is often a complementary product at many events, and that changes things. And also things like taste change, so something goes out of fashion. So we're going to start at this equilibrium point here of Q1, where at 200 pence or £2 we're selling 300 tickets, and we're going to see what happens. We see over here it sort of shifts across. Now what happens initially is there's an excess in demand. What happens is it will actually readjust itself. So what happens initially is more is supplied than is demanded, because people don't want to pay quite so much for it. So suddenly what you see happening here is that quantity 1 goes to quantity 2, and much less is demanded at that price. It goes down to only 100 tickets sold. Okay, and so essentially then the supplier starts actually reevaluating what's going on, and it would reduce its price to £1.50, and again you reach an equilibrium. Then we're going to have a look at what happens if there's a shift in the supply. So we're going to assume a shift in supply from this S1 line to the S2 line. So it's moved left. And this could be because the suppliers found there's been an increase in costs. So maybe, what's happened with some venues, say like a nightclub or a pub venue now, is that costs have gone up because they've had to introduce all sorts of protocols because of COVID-19. So again, we're starting at this equilibrium price of 200 pence or £2, and we're selling 300 tickets. What we're seeing here is there is this shift over, and this actually causes a shortage. Supply is less than is demanded, and the reaction of the suppliers is actually to increase the price here, because obviously they've got to actually meet their costs too, and this would actually result in reduction in demand. So essentially what we're seeing is the suppliers' costs have gone up. The suppliers increases the price to try to accommodate that, but you see that drop off in demand. So as we go from Q1 over to here, Q2, again you're seeing only 100 tickets sold. So again there's likely to be a sort of adjustment here, and the supplier will increase their prices. and you'll end up with some kind of new equilibrium. So at a price of £2.50 to 250 pence, you'll sell about 200. So yeah, if you're having difficulty with this, go and do a little bit of reading around the topic, but it's a quite important implications for events, and I've got a couple of things here to talk through with you. One is about subsidy. Now we've actually, I'd got a previous example here of the opera, whether you should subsidise the producer or the consumer, but also we've seen subsidy through the Eat Out to Help Out scheme this summer for hospitality venues, which obviously have implications for events. So there's two in the example here. If you subsidise the consumer, so you give out vouchers to the consumers, what tends to happen is it moves the demand curve over to the right, and this results in a higher price and an increase in quantity. On the other hand, if you subsidise the producer, it moves the supply curve to the right, and it results in a lower price and an increase in quantity. So both of them work in terms of increasing the quantity, but they have implications for the price. Now, I've sort of spent a little bit of time thinking about the Eat Out to Help Out scheme this summer, which in various ways falls sort of between the two, but it was a subsidy of the consumer, so effectively you could go and eat out for half price. Although it probably didn't actually result in a higher price, it did actually increase the quantity demanded. But ultimately didn't probably shift the prices, because actually it was really just focused on getting people out there eating in venues again. Then at the bottom there, I've also raised another issue in terms of if you're an event promoter, the decisions on pricing. Because what sometimes an event promoter will do is actually put the price much lower than the equilibrium price, so that basically the quantity supplied is to the left of the equilibrium quantity. And basically what this does is it creates excess demand. So if tickets are at a low price, they sell out quickly, and then it gives this signal to consumers that actually this could be a really great event to go to, because people are trying to go and they can't get tickets. And actually that can be a way to actually get something going and encourage people in, and then you can actually move your prices back up. So there's interesting things that you can do once you understand these pricing implications in terms of actually encouraging demand.